Okay, good good afternoon, Raya teachers. So once again, I'm Teacher Laffy or Teacher Alfonso. I'm so excited to share with you what we've done in Key School Manila over the past few weeks and also months. Kasi just a background lang din, when the lockdown happened, my senior high school or my IB diploma class wasn't done yet. So we still had siguro a week before class, or sorry, a month before classes ended. And it really upended everything that we needed to do. So we had to rethink about a lot of things. And today I'm going to be sharing with you some of those experiences that I've shared or that I've had with my fellow teachers. They're they've The experience that we did throughout that 3 week period was really was really beneficial for our learning. It also made us rethink many things that we would normally consider like something that's normal or something that we take it for granted. So I hope that I'll be able to share something that will be worthwhile and also insightful for all of you teachers as well. So today's talk is really all about looking at the effective and affective practices for teaching online. Okay. So, as mentioned before, Key School Manila is also like Raya School. So, we believe in experiential and collaborative learning with all of our students. We believe that learning really happens when there's that interaction between teachers and students. And at the same time, when we give them that learning experience that allows them to really inquire, to work with one another, to have good learning experiences that really highlight like the skills and the attitudes that are being developed. So in a normal day-to-day environment, we make use of a lot of resources that really are designed to help those students develop those skills. However, when the COVID-19 happened and all of that lockdown, so as mentioned, it really upended everything that we did and forced us to move or shift to an online learning environment. We could have simply ended the school year alongside the rest of the other other components of the school, like grade school and junior high school. But because we had started a bit later in the year than the rest of the school, we had to continue on with the last 3 weeks. So what happened was March 10, when the lockdown happened, I told my team that okay, there's not going to be any more physical classes. We're moving to an online class. From March 10 to March 10, 11, 12, 13, we're just going to give out resource packets for now so that we can think about how we're going to do this online program. And I was thankful because the teachers were really flexible and adaptable with what was happening because they knew that this was something that was big and would have an impact on the students if we didn't do it correctly. And for the next few days, my teachers and I were really brainstorming. We were talking to different educators from all over the world, especially those teachers in IB schools that were affected by the pandemic earlier on. Our counterparts in Hong Kong really gave us a lot of good information to help us get started. And so the current learning environment that we were working on required us really to rethink how we engaged our students. Because as we all know, when we shifted to an online learning, initially we thought, okay, we can do like a normal day setup for our students. We can just go about our lessons. But then there was still that element that was uniquely progressive education, which was making sure that our students were engaged. There was a level of interaction and collaboration that continued on with despite the despite the barriers of learning. And so initially when we started that, it was there was a lot of synchronous learning happening. when we created our schedules, it was really like an hour and a half for all of the teachers in each of their subjects. For some of the more intensive subjects, like our French classes, we gave them longer hours, like 2 hours or 3 hours in a week. And so the synchronous learning was our initial step. So you can see on your screens that we made use of a lot of presentations for a while. Our students liked it at first because, for one, they were worried that because classes had ended early, they might not learn, or they might not meet the standards that we were required to meet in the diploma program, and so they were really worried. And when we started the synchronous learning, our students were really thankful because, yay, there's classes. Yay, they had a routine to follow. And even for the teachers, it gave them time to step back from all of the noise that was happening all over the world, and even the news as well. However, for the first few days, this was good in our situation. But then there came the problems with synchronous learning, specifically Zoom fatigue. Having children spend an hour and a half for one subject, and normally we'd have like two or three subjects a day with minimal breaks in between, was really tiring for the students. Initially, they said it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. It's going to give them a routine, a schedule. But then after a while, the stress started piling on to them because, apart from having to attend the online classes, they also had to consider their own family situations. So a lot of them had to like take care of their parents, or they had different home tasks. For the teachers, and doing online classes ended up becoming like mostly teacher-led discussions. Though there were the different features in Zoom that we were looking at or exploring initially, we ended up falling for the trap of just basically lecturing in class. And that was something that neither the student or the teachers wanted, because of um, because of our the principles and philosophies that we believe in. And so it became really tricky for everyone, and student engagement started becoming low after the first few days and weeks. In fact, the student engagement was so low that there were some students who would just pretend that they were online. They would log into their Zoom classes, and then they would turn off their microphones and their cameras, and then we wouldn't know if they were there. So it was really an issue. Plus, at the same time, all of these teacher-led discussions and face-to-face or online classes started taking a toll on the students, to the point that there were also non-submissions amongst them, and we didn't want that to happen. We still had 2.5 weeks to go before the end of the school year, and we didn't want that student engagement to go down, or we didn't want their motivation. We didn't want to lose their motivation to learn. And even for the teachers, it was also starting to become taxing, because as the new guidelines in the government came out, there they had to we also had to understand that they had their own family situations. Sila yung tributes of their family, so they had to be the ones to go out. And so as a team, we gathered again, and we were reading the articles talaga. Teacher Annie, your primer with the Reagan was really helpful. That one really helped us realign and refocus on what we were going to do over the next 2.5 weeks. And so we decided, let's take a look again at what the schools are doing. There is that big debate on the synchronous and asynchronous learning. We had a big debate about that even as a team, like which was more beneficial, or what would have a huge impact on the students. And we decided that we would draw the line and say, let's just mix and match based on the context that we're working in. Since we still have our class periods of 1 hour and 30 minutes, we could still have blocks of synchronous time and then blocks of asynchronous time. And then even throughout the week, there would be asynchronous learning for the students. And as a team, we were looking at different sites and we came across this, which is basically from a course that one of my teachers took. And she shared this with us and said that in order for us to deliver an effective and impactful synchronous and asynchronous online learning, let's reflect on the needs of our learners. Currently, what do they need? What do they have? What can we deliver or provide for them over this next few weeks? And then we also considered that let's just not reinvent the wheel at this moment because that's really not the point. Our goal here is to educate our students, not to be like the standard for online learning in the Philippines. That's not our goal. But let's continue doing or using what we've done in the past and let's just tweak it a little bit. So we had to design learning for quick and agile delivery and reflect and iterate for improvement. So with that realignment of what we're doing or of what we did, we I'm now going to share with you some of the things that we changed as a result of learning more about this online program. Okay, so the first thing was really to provide structured conferencing and feedback. So in as much as we wanted to provide like face-to-face online classes, we had to acknowledge that that was not going to be doable, or that was going to be stressful for the students. So let's leverage the different applications that we know, or that we've used in our classrooms, and let's make sure that our students are properly supported. So here you can see on your screens that my math teacher, because he did not have a stable and strong internet connection for face-to-face classes, he made use of this website known as Dot Storming, where he was able to post different tasks for his students to work on. And all throughout the task making activity, he was constantly providing feedback for the students. You can see in the pictures that he was giving out feedback, comments as well. And more than just giving that feedback, he would carve out 15 minutes of his day to just simply talk to his students, ask them, "How are you today? What are you feeling? What makes you anxious?" So more than just thinking about the academic requirements, our math teacher went out of his way to talk to the students because they needed that. There might have been like unresolved feelings, or maybe they were confused with what was happening, and because of the 15 minutes that he had with those students, they really appreciated it because it showed that the teacher was cared for them as well. Okay. And in terms of feedback, we've just used whatever tools that we have, that we've used in the past. So on your left, you'll see Google Doc, a Google document, and we really made sure that we use that extensively so that we can monitor work at the same time and provide feedback in the same way that we would normally do in a regular day-to-day class as well. Okay, so now that we had the tools and also an agreement of making sure to check up on the students, it was time for us to rethink about the resources and also the delivery of our classes. And our language and literature teacher, Teacher Jed, um, really started getting into modules. We knew that the content in the IB diploma program was extensive, and there we were afraid that there might be like the challenge of not meeting content because of the time element. So what better way than to just basically chunk out the content and turn it into modules. So instead of devoting a full 1 hour and 30-minute class to just discussions, what he did was he would upload these kinds of PDFs to his students via Google Classroom, and in those PDFs there would be these tasks where they could already research. They would collaborate offline or outside of class, and then they would share all of their findings in a shared document as well. So what happens during the actual online class was that it was really just a discussion, talking about mga misconceptions that might have come up, discussing about their issues and challenges, or even talking about like what parts of the lessons they did not understand. And because of that, more time was spent really on deepening their understanding and also building up their conceptual understanding as well. Now, in terms of the arts and also the physical education classes, because of what was happening all over the world, we had to also be a little bit creative in terms of like giving students an opportunity to demonstrate their knowledge or even their experience or even learning from others. So our arts teacher took this moment to tap into his art community and to bring in different resource speakers. The session that they had was all about learning about the creative art processes of artists and digital marketers. And the session had these resource speakers share about the different styles and techniques that they use. And we were thankful, or he was thankful for this whole online situation, because normally it would be difficult to get these resource speakers into one room or even into a single place. But because everyone was quarantined, he decided to leverage that 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 opportunity to invite them over into his class. And what happened was it was a rich experience for the students, because one of the resource speakers was a Marvel illustrator, and he really talked about, this is the creative process of Marvel, this is my creative process, how do we combine all of that together. And it was an eye-opening experience for our art students, because they really needed to know that process, and hearing it from an expert, even with this online environment, gave them a lot of insights and new perspectives as well. Okay. And the same also goes with our science classes. Now that was one challenge that we had to face, was foregoing all of the experiments in our science classes, because for one, we did not have the subscriptions, or we did not know um, how to do experiments online. But because of the tools that Zoom has in its own system, our science teacher still got creative and started drawing all of these things and using the annotate features of Zoom to allow for more student engagement and practical learning. On my end, as the history teacher, for me, it was a bit hard to let go of the teacher discussion or the teacher led discussion. So I made use of different applications such as Pear Deck with Google Slides, so that um, my presentations would be interactive. So they would join this website and then they would click on the links in that presentation. There would also be like interactive elements where they could mind map or draw what they're currently thinking about, or give out quick formative assessments for the students. So we really leveraged what we used in class or in school, so that we could provide our students with a lot of options. So here are some of the applications that we've used in classes. So we've used Google Meet, Zoom, though the students preferred Zoom over Google Meet because they did not like the interface of Google Meet. Our students are familiar with Padlet, and we've really used and maximized Padlet even before the online learning environment, online learning classes, because we wanted to make sure that they were still writing something, they were still presenting something to us. So we know that there was that thought process happening. There was a question among our team as the school year was ending, which was whether we would have the summative assessments. It was a very contentious issue because on one side of the faculty, they were saying that the IB has already canceled their global examinations. Why can't we do the same? Why are we still adding on to this, to the pressure and also the stress of the students by having summative assessments? Then on the other side of the argument was that we still need to assess the students um, regardless of the situation. We need to rethink how we can give out summative assessments. Maybe instead of the usual pen and paper tests, we can do like project based learning assessments or performance tasks as well. So let's just rethink rethink the weights and the percentages of our assessments, and we did that. But for some subjects like sciences, literature, history, and psychology, we made use of this website known as Class Marker. It's an assessment platform that's free for students and teachers to use, and it had some of the basic features of assessments. It's a little bit more complex than Google Forms, because with Google Forms, they could just simply access the link anytime. But we wanted to make sure that we would still keep the integrity of our assessments as well. So these were some of the apps that we used. And before we rolled out the classes, I was busy making these different PDF instructions for the teachers, or even giving them links to video or explainer videos on YouTube, just so that they become familiar with it. Because even though our teachers are techie, we were trekking into unforeseen territory, and as the coordinator, I needed to make sure that my teachers were properly supported and guided as well. Okay. And so after 3 weeks of online learning, I sent out an evaluation for my students to think about like what had transpired all throughout. And these are some of the things that they said in that evaluation. So a lot of them were quite thankful for the online classes because it gave them the routine. It also exposed them to something new. They thoroughly enjoyed how the teachers were constantly asking them, how are you? How are you feeling today?" And that was something that they highly appreciated, because it would lead to talks about, "Teach, I'm not feeling so great today. I don't feel like my 100%." And so all of us ended up becoming like the advisors and mentors of these students. And so we needed to have that time with them, really. Okay. And then in terms of what we could have improved on, it was really just them clamoring for more activities within the class to work individually. One thing that we were constantly doing was that we were asking the students to work collaboratively all of the time, but we forgot to take into consideration that, oh nga, no, there are these students who don't want to who don't want to work collaboratively. So why are we forcing them to work um, in a collaborative manner? So that was something that we needed to rethink about as we're moving on into the new school year. And then you can see that there were still some issues of internet connection and also the use of resources and gadgets at home, because some of them had siblings who were also studying in, let's say, Ateneo or UP, and they still had online classes. And so with that in mind, we really pushed for more opportunities for less face-to-face interaction and more on the self-directed and student-based lessons for our students. We know that though they are in grade 11 and there is that notion that they should be independent, we still had to make it a point that we would have consultation hours for the students in case they needed us. And then we made sure that, let's say, the documents that they were working on, we would have access to it so that we can see whether the Google document was moving or not, if students were actually adding onto it. And we were still monitoring whether they were, what do you call this? Whether they were contributing to the assessment or to the project that we assigned them to. One thing that we really had to consider or would consider for the next school year is to give our students that 5 minute break. So just imagine our students, their classes would start at 9 o'clock and it would end at 10:30. Then the next class would be at 10:30 all the way up to 12 o'clock. So there wasn't a lot of time for students to breathe. There were moments wherein a student would enter the classroom late, or they entered the Zoom meeting late because of that. So we were quite lenient with them, and we would just tell them, okay, this is what happened, this is what transpired. As much as possible, we didn't really impose too much on the students because they were going through a lot as well, and we wanted to make sure that they were still comfortable in their learning environment. Okay. So as I end the presentation, so here are just some things that we would like, or that we are considering, or our guiding principles for next school year. First, really, is that this is the age-old adage of less is more. We really believe in this. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to change something that, or add something that's unfamiliar to our students. Even for our students, we don't want them to add so much. If there is change, we would have to do it quite gradually. So that was something that we really needed to consider as we're going into an online environment. At the same time, when it comes to using different applications, we like to stick to a few, to like 3 or 4 applications that we've already used inside our own classrooms in the past. So this would also lessen the need for like training teachers or even students, telling them that this is what you should click, or this is how you should work this application out. So that's something um, that we really strive for. So we don't want to really include or to add on to the students. As much as possible, we'd like to keep it simple. Okay. The next principle that we adhere to is really managing our expectations. At the start, we thought that, no, this is going to be an online class wherein we would just really do one is to one interaction. It would be like a regular class. We do everything normally, but everything that happened has really upended everything that we've done, and we had to rethink and rework our expectations. So it works hand in hand with the less is more principle. As much as possible, we, as teachers, before we run anything, we make sure that we talk to one another to try it out. We do like mock presentations, or even mock trials, so that we know that there is, so that we can troubleshoot as well. Because even though we know our students are techie, using educational technology, or using technology in the context of education, is something quite different, and we can't expect them to like know this from the get-go as well. And lastly, before anything else, it's really connect with the students. Even though we might have a lot of content, we might have a lot of um, assessments or requirements to give out to our students, um, we should value that connection with them, because even though this is an online learning environment and we are many, many kilometers away, or socially and physically distant from them right now, it's still important that we connect with them because they need that support. They might not be getting that support from their parents or from their home environment, because um, their home environment might also be engaged, or might be having problems as well. So, as teachers, it's our role really to take on that mentoring and advisorship role, to be connected with them, to ensure that their well-being, their mental, physical, social well-being is taken care of. And so that's really the heart of the online learning environment. It's really just connect with your students. The the content will always be there, but it's the connections with them that are really important, because if they don't feel motivated to learn, then it's easy for them to stop schooling, or for them to just zone out and not do anything anymore, feel unmotivated. So that's it for my presentation. I'd like to thank you, everyone, and I'm opening the floor for any questions that you might have about this.